When people imagine an economic collapse, they focus on what disappears. Jobs vanish, currencies fail, stock portfolios evaporate. The images that stay in our heads are always the same: empty shelves, long lines, desperate faces. But history tells a quieter story underneath the panic. In every collapse, while most people are trying to hang on to what they used to have, a smaller group of people are doing something else. They are using a different kind of wealth. Not money in a bank, not numbers on a screen, but skills that continue to matter when the system around them stops working. The Great Depression in the 1930s, the fall of the Soviet Union, the hyperinflation of Weimar Germany, Argentina in 2001, Venezuela in the last decade. Different continents, different currencies, different political slogans. Yet in each collapse, the same kinds of people manage not just to survive, but to stay useful, needed, and in many cases, quietly prosperous. They all have one thing in common. They own skills that do not crash when markets do. Money is a claim on other people's work. Skills are your ability to create value directly. When money breaks, skills become the only reliable currency. That is why the most resilient people in every collapse are not simply the ones with hidden cash or secret gold. They are the people whose abilities keep solving real problems for other human beings, no matter what is happening to interest rates or stock indices. The first category of those skills has survived every crisis since the first city was built: the ability to produce food and basic necessities. During the Great Depression, the families hit hardest were not the farmers living on the edge of town. They were the urban workers whose entire survival depended on a paycheck that suddenly stopped coming. Farm families who could grow food, keep chickens, repair tools, and preserve harvests experienced the same depression on paper, but a very different reality at the dinner table. In the collapse of the Soviet Union, garden plots behind apartment blocks, small, rough, improvised, fed millions when official supply chains failed. You do not need to own 1,000 acres to learn this category of skill. The underlying ability is understanding how to turn land, even a small piece of it, into calories. Gardening, seed saving, basic soil care, food preservation, small-scale animal care. These skills look quaint when everything is fine. In a serious downturn, they become a form of wealth you can literally eat. History is very clear on one point. People who can reliably produce food experience recessions and collapses in a fundamentally different way from those who cannot. The second group of crisis-proof skills is less physical, but just as critical: the ability to trade, negotiate, and build value through exchange. In every collapse, official money becomes unstable. Sometimes it inflates into worthlessness. Sometimes withdrawals are frozen. Sometimes foreign currency replaces local currency in everyday life. Yet people continue to trade. In Weimar Germany, families who understood barter were able to swap goods and services, while salaries became a joke. In Yugoslavia's hyperinflation, small traders who could source and move scarce items became the new middle class. This kind of skill is not about shouting in a marketplace. It is about learning how to see what is scarce, what is abundant, and where the gap is. It is the ability to negotiate fairly, to read people quickly, to find mutually beneficial deals even when everyone is under pressure. When your official wage no longer covers rent, the ability to turn skills, contacts, or small inventories into barter or side income becomes the difference between constant crisis and rough stability. People who know how to deal, not just to earn a paycheck, consistently do better when the paycheck system starts to break. The third category is the family of repair, maintenance, and hands-on technical skills. In a booming consumer economy, nobody thinks much about repair. When something breaks, you throw it away and buy a new one. During and after a collapse, that option disappears. In the Soviet collapse, mechanics, electricians, welders, and carpenters could always find work, even when doctors and engineers were driving taxis. In Argentina's crisis, skilled tradespeople were paid in cash, food, and favors when white-collar salaries were months in arrears. The pattern is always the same. When imports are expensive, when supply chains are unreliable, when replacement parts are hard to find, the ability to keep old things running is suddenly worth a lot. The skill to repair an engine, fix a pipe, wire a building safely, sew clothing, or build a shelter becomes both income and insurance. These skills are physical, visible, and hard to fake. You cannot print a mechanic. You cannot vote a carpenter into existence. In fragile times, that scarcity is power. Alongside physical repair comes a quieter but equally durable group of skills: medical and caregiving competence. In every crisis, health systems come under strain. Hospitals are overloaded, medicines are short, people delay treatment because they are broke or afraid. In those conditions, the person who knows how to stop a bleed, treat a wound, handle a fever, stabilize a broken limb, or care for the vulnerable does not stay unemployed for long. During wars, depressions, and collapses, nurses, midwives, and people with real first aid knowledge have always been in demand. You do not need to be a surgeon to become valuable here. Basic first aid, CPR, wound care, knowledge of hygiene and disease prevention, even simple skills like safely caring for children and the elderly. These become priceless when formal support systems are under pressure. In refugee crises and bombed-out cities, people remember exactly who helped them, who knew what to do, and who showed up. Those reputations often outlast the crisis itself. Caring skill is a form of capital that does not depend on a stock market. Another class of skills that consistently survives collapse is less visible and often underestimated: the ability to organize people, build trust, and solve problems in groups. Economic crises do not only break banks, they break social fabric. Fear rises, trust falls, people retreat into small circles, but someone still has to coordinate. Food still has to be distributed, security has to be arranged, information has to be shared. In every collapse you can study, communities that had at least a few practical, calm organizers endured far better than those that had none. Leadership in crisis is not about speeches, it is about logistics. Who brings what? Who watches when? How conflicts are resolved without violence? How information flows without panic? The person who can sit in the middle of that chaos and design a workable plan becomes extremely valuable, even if they never touch a cent. History's quiet survivors are often not the loudest or the richest at the beginning. They are the people others naturally trust when things get confusing. Underneath all of these categories is one more skill that never goes out of style: the ability to learn quickly and adapt mentally when the rules change. Every collapse produces two kinds of people. The first group spends years waiting for things to go back to normal. They cling to the old map long after the territory has changed. They hold on to a single career path, a single way to make money, a single identity that no longer fits the world around them. The second group treats the crisis as new data. They watch what is actually happening, not what is supposed to happen. They pivot, sometimes painfully, into whatever the new reality demands. In the 1990s, when the Soviet system fell apart, millions of people with prestigious titles and advanced degrees discovered that their skills no longer matched the new economy. Some waited for the state to rescue them. Others swallowed their pride and learned to trade, to repair, to start tiny businesses, to speak new languages, to move countries. The difference in outcomes was brutal. Those who adapted quickly were not necessarily happier, but they were rarely the ones standing in the longest lines. Economic literacy itself is part of this adaptive package. People who understand even basic macro forces, how inflation works, what debt cycles are, how governments usually respond to crisis, are far less likely to be blindsided or scammed when things turn. They do not believe every rumor. They are slower to panic. They recognize when a currency is being sacrificed and when an asset class is being artificially inflated. That does not make them invincible, but it does make them less vulnerable. When you put all of this together, a pattern appears. The skills that survive every collapse in history do not depend on a specific technology, a specific country, or a specific political system. Producing essentials, repairing what exists, caring for bodies, trading value, organizing people, and adjusting your thinking faster than the crisis can box you in. These are the skills that cannot be devalued by a central bank, frozen by a government order, or destroyed by a market crash. You will notice that none of them require permission. You do not have to wait for a company or an institution to hand them to you. You can start learning to grow food in a pot on a balcony. You can study basic first aid for free. You can watch how good negotiators talk. You can ask a tradesperson to show you how they repair something. You can practice paying attention to how people behave under stress and how plans are built in uncertainty. You can read history not as entertainment, but as a manual. The modern world trains us to be very good at narrow, specialized tasks that only make sense inside a stable system. History suggests that you should add a second layer under that specialization. A set of crisis-resistant skills that nobody can cancel, confiscate, or inflate away. When the next economic storm arrives, and it will, the people who hold those skills will not be immune to pain, but they will not be helpless. They will still be able to trade, to build, to fix, to feed, to care, and to lead. Every empire that has ever existed has promised its citizens that the current order will last. Every empire has been wrong. The people who thrived on the other side were not always the ones with the biggest accounts or the fanciest titles. They were the ones who had quietly converted time into ability, the ones who had turned uncertainty into practice, the ones who understood that real wealth is not just what you own, but what you can do when everything you own suddenly matters less.